The flowers were white. The pews were packed. 300 people sat inside Calvary Grace Church in Newport Beach, California, dressed in their finest, waiting for a wedding that had been 4 years in the making. The string quartet played. The groomsmen stood straight. The ring bearer, a 6-year-old boy in a tiny bow tie, was already sweating. And at the front of that church, under the arch wrapped in roses and baby's breath, stood Declan Morrow, 31 years old, sharp jaw, broad shoulders, wearing a charcoal suit that his mother had driven 2 hours to help him pick out. He looked like a man who had finally won something, like a man who had done everything right and was now standing at the finish line, catching his breath, proud. He had no idea the finish line was about to disappear. Have you ever stood in a room full of people, smiling on the outside, and then had your whole world pull the rug from under you in front of every single one of them? Because that is exactly what happened to Declan Morrow on a Saturday afternoon in October. And nothing, not one thing, prepared him for it. Before we get into what happened at that church, you need to understand something. This story is not just about a wedding that never happened. By the time this is over, you're going to hear about a DNA test that silenced a room of 50 people. You're going to hear about an inheritance that changed everything. By 3 days, you're going to hear about blackmail, an arrest, and a woman who gambled her entire future on a man with a private jet and lost every single chip. But first, the church. The clock hit 2:17 p.m. The ceremony was supposed to start at 2. Declan checked his watch for the 4th time. He glanced at his best man, Forrest Langley, who was standing beside him with the calm, practiced face of a man trying very hard not to panic. "She's just late," Forrest said quietly. "She's never late," Declan said. He was right. Vivian Cole, the woman Declan had loved for 4 years, the woman who had cried when he proposed on the rooftop of a restaurant in Scottsdale, the woman whose mother had called him son for 2 years, was never late for anything. At 2:23, Declan felt his phone vibrate in his breast pocket. The vibration was gentle, casual, the way a reminder buzzes before a dentist appointment. He pulled it out. Read the message. Read it again. Put the phone back. Forrest watched his face. Declan said nothing. Forrest leaned over and lowered his voice. What did it say? Declan looked straight ahead at the altar, at the candles still burning, at the flowers still perfect, at the 300 people still waiting. His jaw was tight. His eyes were dry. He said quietly, "She's not coming." The whispers started from the back of the church and moved forward like a slow wave. First, a few guests near the entrance doors craned their necks. Then Vivian's aunt stood up. Then her cousin pressed a phone to her ear. Within 4 minutes, the entire left side of the church, Vivian's side, was in quiet, buzzing chaos. Vivian's mother, Rosalind Cole, was sitting in the front left pew in a cream dress and a hat she had ordered from Atlanta. When the news reached her, she put a hand over her mouth. But here's the thing, and the people closest to her would later notice this detail. Her eyes didn't cry. They shifted, fast and calculating, like she already knew. Declan's phone screen still glowed in his pocket. The message read, "Declan, I'm sorry. I can't do this. I deserve a life I've always dreamed about. Please don't call me." That was it. No explanation. No meeting. No conversation that two adults who had spent 4 years building something together at least owed each other. Just 11 words in a period. Sent from a woman who was, at that exact moment, sitting in the back seat of a black SUV heading away from Newport Beach. Declan's father, a quiet, wide-built man named August Morrow, was the one who walked the front of the church and told the guests that the ceremony would not be taking place. He did not raise his voice. He thanked everyone for coming. He said there would be no reception. What he did not say, because he did not yet know, was that his son's fiancée had not simply gotten cold feet. She had made a choice, and that choice had a name. Declan and Vivian had met through mutual friends at a rooftop gathering in Houston, Texas, 3.5 years before that ruined Saturday in October. She was laughing at something when he first saw her, head thrown back, completely unbothered. The kind of laugh that made everyone around her laugh too. He was a civil engineer. She was building a small event planning company from scratch. They were young. They were ambitious. They made sense. For the first 2 years, they were the couple everyone pointed to. Declan helped Vivian get her first big corporate client by connecting her with a developer he knew. He co-signed a lease for her office space when her credit was still thin. He drove to her parents' home in Dallas, 4.5 hours each way, every holiday because her father's health was declining and she didn't like driving that stretch of highway alone. He was not flashy. He was not loud, but he showed up every single time. The cracks started in year 3. They started quietly, the way cracks do. Vivian's mother, Rosalind, had always had opinions about money. She had grown up watching her own father work himself to dust for a modest income, and she had spent her entire adult life convincing herself that a woman should never have to live like that. When Vivian started dating Declan, Rosalind smiled at him. She was polite at dinners. She complimented his handshake. But in private, she told her daughter something different. He's a good man, baby, but good men don't always keep you comfortable. Then Vivian's Uncle Merrick Cole, the family's loudest voice and proudest failure, started showing up to Sunday dinners with questions. Declan, what's the 5-year plan, brother? You still doing that contractor stuff? What's the ceiling on that? Declan would answer patiently. Vivian would go quiet. The questions got sharper. The silences got longer. Then came Garrison Vale. Garrison Vale was 44 years old. He had made his first million in commercial real estate in Atlanta before he turned 30, expanded into tech investments along the East Coast, and had recently moved back to California after 8 years abroad. He was tall, silver-templed, and carried himself with the kind of ease that only comes when money is no longer a question you need to answer. He had private planes. He had a house in Newport Beach and one in Scottsdale. He had a table at every restaurant that required a 3-month reservation. He met Vivian at a charity gala. She was organizing in Los Angeles. She was managing the event. He was one of the headline donors. He noticed her. He pursued her. And Vivian, who had spent the last year listening to her mother question her choices and her uncle question her boyfriend's ceiling, was not prepared to resist someone who treated her future like it was already decided. She never told Declan, not about the first dinner, not about the second, not about the overnight trip to Palm Springs that she told Declan was a client site visit. She simply began living 2 lives. Declan noticed the signs the way you notice a smell, slowly, and then all at once. Vivian started keeping her phone face down. She started leaving the room to take calls. She started being tired on the nights they had plans and energized on the nights she said she was working late. He asked her once, gently, "Is something going on?" She looked him directly in the eye and said, "You're being paranoid, Declan." He believed her for about 3 weeks. Then he called Petra Hollis. Petra Hollis ran a private investigation firm out of Los Angeles that specialized in domestic cases. She was 48, sharp-eyed, and completely impossible to charm. She had worked for divorcing billionaires and terrified spouses and heartbroken parents, and she did not offer opinions, only evidence. Declan hired her on a Thursday. He told himself it was just to put his mind at rest. He told himself he was almost certainly wasting money. Petra called him 10 days later. "Mr. Morrow," she said, "I need you to sit down." Petra Hollis laid out a report that was 37 pages long. Hotel records. 2 overnight stays at a Ritz-Carlton in Los Angeles, both under a reservation made on Garrison Vale's corporate account. Both on nights Vivian had told Declan she was either working or visiting a friend in Malibu. Phone logs. A secondary number that Vivian used exclusively to communicate with Garrison. Over 600 messages in 90 days. A wire transfer. $3,000 sent from an account Declan had never seen before to Vivian's personal checking account, with a memo line reading simply, "For the weekend." Witness statements. A woman named Delphine Ross, who worked at the front desk of a restaurant in Beverly Hills, recognized Vivian's photograph and confirmed she had seen her there on multiple occasions with an older man who matched Garrison Vale's description. They weren't exactly hiding, Delphine told Petra. Declan sat with that report for 5 days. He didn't confront Vivian. He didn't cancel the wedding. He made a decision that most people, if they're being honest, would not have had the discipline to make. He waited. He said nothing. He stored everything. And on the Saturday morning of his wedding, while Vivian was getting her hair done with her bridesmaids and he was supposed to be at brunch with his groomsmen, he quietly sent Petra's complete file to a secure folder in his personal email account. Then he went to the church, and he stood at the altar, and he waited for a woman he already knew was not coming. By Sunday morning, Newport Beach was talking. Not everyone knew the details yet. What they knew was the image. Declan Morrow, standing at the altar of Calvary Grace Church in a charcoal suit, reading a text message, while 300 people watched his face. The photo had been taken by a guest near the back. You couldn't see the screen. You could only see Declan's expression, and his expression told you everything you needed to know. The image spread. By Monday, Vivian's social media told a different story. A photo appeared, posted by someone in Garrison Vale's circle, not by Vivian herself, but by a woman who attended his parties and documented everything. It showed Vivian at a rooftop dinner in Malibu, laughing, in a dress that cost more than most people's rent, sitting beside Garrison Vale, who was leaning toward her with the relaxed confidence of a man who had just won a bet. The caption read, "Living her best life." The comments erupted. People who had been at the wedding, people who had brought gifts, driven hours, taken days off work, were furious. But others were celebrating. She upgraded. Can you blame her? Girl, get your bag. And Declan Morrow, who had done nothing wrong, who had built 4 years of loyalty and support and showed up every single time, became the punchline. Community members who barely knew him started offering opinions. Vivian's Uncle Merritt posted publicly, "My niece knows her worth. Some men need to grow before they deserve a woman like her." Declan's phone rang nonstop. Friends, his mother crying in the kitchen, his father sitting at the dining table, silent, like a man who had run out of words. Declan answered none of the calls. He sat in his apartment, ate a bowl of cereal, and watched a football game. And while everyone else was talking about what had just happened to him, Declan Moore was quietly thinking about what was going to happen next. It was a Tuesday, 72 hours after the wedding that never happened. Declan was in his kitchen, answering emails, when his phone rang from a number he did not recognize. A Los Angeles area code. He almost let it go to voicemail. He picked up on the third ring. "Mr. Morrow." The voice was measured, professional. The voice of a man who delivered important information for a living and had learned not to rush it. "My name is Clifton Abra. I'm a senior partner at Abra and Wells Legal Group in Los Angeles. I represent the estate of Eldridge Morrow." Declan set down his coffee cup. "My grandfather," he said. "Yes, sir. I'm calling because Mr. Eldridge Morrow passed away 9 days ago. He left specific instructions that you were to be contacted in person after your wedding, regardless of outcome." A brief pause. "Given the circumstances, I believe now is the appropriate time. I'd like to schedule a meeting at your earliest convenience." Declan stared at the wall. His grandfather Eldridge had been a quiet man, a man who wore the same 3 pairs of shoes for 15 years, not because he couldn't afford new ones, but because he saw no reason to change what was working. He had lived in a modest house in Pasadena. He called on birthdays. He showed up at Christmases and said very little and ate everything on his plate. He had never once mentioned a will. He had never once mentioned what he owned. The office of Abra and Wells was on the 14th floor of a glass building in downtown Los Angeles, with a view that reminded you exactly how small your problems were. Clifton Abra was 60 years old, compact, and wore glasses that sat low on his nose. He shook Declan's hand with both of his. He offered coffee. He set a folder on the table between them that was thicker than a Bible. "Your grandfather," Clifton said, "was a very private man, intentionally so." He opened the folder. What Declan learned in the next 40 minutes rearranged everything he thought he knew about his family. Eldridge Morrow had spent 30 years quietly acquiring commercial properties across California, 3 office buildings in Pasadena, a strip of retail space in Burbank, 2 warehouses in the San Fernando Valley that he leased to distribution companies. He had invested early in agricultural land in Fresno that had tripled in value over 2 decades. He held significant shares in a regional logistics company that had recently been acquired by a national firm. Total estimated value of the estate, $4.7 million. Declan sat completely still. Clifton folded his hands. You are the sole named beneficiary, Mr. Morrow. There is one condition attached, which your grandfather specified in a handwritten addendum. He slid a single page across the table. Declan read it. His grandfather's handwriting was tight and slightly slanted, the penmanship of a man who had learned to write when writing still meant something. Declan, I built this slowly. Everything I leave you is built on patience and good character. I ask only that you continue to operate the same way. Make decisions that your grandmother would have respected. The rest is yours. Declan read it twice, folded it, put it in his jacket pocket. There's one more thing, Clifton said. He opened to a tab section near the back of the folder. Your grandfather had already approved your upcoming marriage at the time of his passing. He had made private arrangements, not legally binding, but documented here, to gradually include your future wife in several business opportunities as part of the family structure. He believed that building wealth together was the proper way. Clifton closed the folder. Obviously, given what has occurred, those arrangements are no longer relevant. Declan drove home from that office in complete silence. He did not call his father. He did not call Forrest. He drove the freeway with both hands on the wheel and let the math settle over him like a slow tide. 3 days. Vivian Cole had walked away from him, had left him standing in a church in front of 300 people, had sent 11 word in the period, had chosen Garrisonvale and his rooftop parties and his Malibu penthouse. And 3 days later, the man she abandoned had become a millionaire. Had she stayed, had she walked down that aisle on Saturday the way she was supposed to, she would have been standing beside him in Clifton Aber's office on Tuesday. She would have been part of everything. Her name would have been in those documents. Her future would have been inseparable from his. Instead, she was in Malibu, posting photos, living, as her friends kept saying, her best life. Declan pulled into his parking spot, sat in the car, looked at his grandfather's handwritten note through the windshield. Then he got out, went upstairs, and called his father. August Morrow listened without interrupting for 11 straight minutes. When Declan finished, his father was quiet for a long moment. Then August said, Your grandfather always said the right people find out what they need to find out at exactly the right time. While Declan was discovering what he had inherited, Vivian was discovering what she had walked into. The first 2 weeks with Garrisonvale had been everything her mother had described when she talked about a better life. The cars, the dinners, the trips, the way people move when Garrison entered a room, creating space for him the way water moves for a stone. Vivian posted. She glowed. She let the world see. But by week 3, she started noticing things. Small things first. Garrison chose what they ate, not in the charming, confident way she had initially read it, but in a way that made her realize she had not picked a meal since she moved in. He commented on her clothing before she left rooms. Not compliments, assessments. That color is too casual for where we're going. You look better in the green one. He had opinions about her friendships, too. Her college friend Tamsin Pruitt called twice, and Garrison watched Vivian's face during both calls, and afterward asked, with a smile that was not quite a smile, who Tamsin was and how they knew each other. Vivian answered. He nodded slowly, said nothing. Tamsin stopped being invited to things. Then came the argument about her phone. It was a Wednesday evening. Vivian had stepped onto the balcony to take a call from her event planning business. She was still managing 2 clients remotely, trying to hold on to the career she had built. The call ran 20 minutes. When she came back inside, Garrison was sitting in the living room with his legs crossed and an expression so neutral it was frightening. Who was that? He asked. A client, she said. Which client? She told him. He nodded. I prefer you handle business calls during business hours. After 6, your time is here. Vivian stared at him. She laughed a little, the uneasy laugh you make when you're hoping something is a joke. It was not a joke. 6 weeks after the wedding that never happened, Vivian took a test in the bathroom of Garrison's Malibu penthouse. Positive. She sat on the edge of the bathtub. For a long time, she had imagined this moment differently. She had imagined it in a home she shared with someone who would hold her face when she told him. She had imagined excitement and fear and love all tangled together in a way that felt like the beginning of something. Instead, she sat on a marble floor in a bathroom the size of her old apartment, holding a test, and the first emotion she felt was not joy. It was a specific, cold feeling of a door closing. She told Garrison that evening. He went very still. Then he poured himself a drink. Then he said, without turning around, "We'll take care of it." "What does that mean?" Vivian asked. "It means we'll make a decision that is practical for where we are right now." "It's my body," she said, "and it's Vivian." He turned around then. His voice had the patience of a man, explaining something to someone he considered slightly slow. "I have 2 children from a previous marriage. I have obligations. This is not the time." She did not sleep that night. By month 2, Vivian understood something she had not been willing to admit to herself. She had not upgraded her life. She had traded one set of circumstances for a completely different kind of cage, one with better furniture and a worse lock. She tried to call her mother, Rosalind Cole, who had spent 3 years encouraging her daughter toward exactly this outcome, listened to Vivian describe Garrison's behavior, and then said, with the certainty of a woman who had committed too publicly to an opinion to reverse it, "Baby, all powerful men are like that in the beginning. You just have to learn how to handle him." Vivian hung up and did not call back for 2 weeks. She could not call her old friends. Garrison had made that world smaller than she had realized. She could not call Declan. Or could she? On a Thursday evening, 3 months after the wedding day that broke Newport Beach's collective jaw, a black car pulled up outside Declan's apartment building. Vivian Cole stepped out. She was wearing a camel coat and sunglasses. She did not take off until she was inside the lobby, standing in front of Declan's door. She knocked. She waited. Declan opened the door. He looked at her, not with rage, not with a desperate, shattered expression she might have expected. He looked at her with the particular calm of a man who had spent 3 months preparing for exactly this moment. "Declan," she said. "Vivian, can I come in?" He stepped aside. She sat on his couch. He stood in the kitchen doorway with his arms crossed. She took off the sunglasses. Her eyes were tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. "I made a mistake," she said. He said nothing. "I know what I did. I know how I left. And I'm not here to pretend otherwise." She took a breath. "I'm pregnant." Declan's expression did not change. "And I think," she stopped, steadied herself, "I think the baby might be yours. Let's pause for 1 second, because I know exactly what half of you are thinking right now." She left him at the altar. She was seeing Garrison for months before the wedding. She had hotel records, wire transfers, and 600 messages in another man's phone. And now she's showing up saying the baby might be his? Drop your reaction in the comments right now. I want to see it. But don't go anywhere, because Declan Morrow is not the man she remembers. And what he does next is the reason the story exists. Declan let Vivian speak. He let her explain. He let her cry. And she did cry. Genuinely, the way people cry when they're not performing grief but actually sitting inside it. He let her talk about Garrison, about the control, about the pregnancy, about the fear. He listened to all of it. Then he said, "I'll agree to one thing." She looked up. A DNA test. Vivian hesitated for exactly half a second. The kind of hesitation that answers a question before the words do. Then she nodded. "Fine," she said. "Yes." The Morrow family did not operate with noise. They operated with structure. Within 2 weeks, both families were gathered in the living room of August Morrow's home in Pasadena, a wide, quiet house with hardwood floors and framed photographs on every wall. Present were August and his wife Celestine Morrow, Declan's older sister Waverly, Forrest Langley, and 2 of August's brothers. On Vivian's side, Rosalind Cole, Uncle Merritt, quieter now, notably, and Vivian's older cousin Deja, who had the grace to look ashamed. Clifton Abra was also present, which confused Vivian's family. They did not yet know why a lawyer was sitting in the corner of the room with a closed briefcase. The DNA results had been processed through an independent lab, certified, sealed. Declan held the envelope. He did not open it immediately. Instead, he said, "Before I open this, I want everyone in this room to understand something. The room was completely still. I hired an investigator 7 months ago, before the wedding. I have a full report documenting everything that happened during the last year of my relationship with Vivian. Hotel records, phone logs, financial transfers, witness statements. I have had all of it the entire time. Rosalind's face changed. Merritt uncrossed his legs. Vivian closed her eyes. I am not opening this envelope to hurt anyone, Declan said. I am opening it because the truth belongs in this room. He opened it. He read it. He placed it on the coffee table and turned it so the room could see. Probability of paternity. Declan Morrow, 0%. The child was not his. The silence that followed was the kind that is physical weight. You could feel it pressing on your chest. Then Vivian's cousin Deja exhaled sharply. Rosalind put both hands flat on her thighs and looked at the floor. Merritt, the man who had posted publicly that his niece knew her worth, the man who had questioned Declan's ceiling at every Sunday dinner, stood up, walked to the window, and stayed there with his back to the room for the rest of the meeting. Vivian did not move. She sat with her hands in her lap, like a woman who had known this was coming, and had come anyway because she had no other cards left. Declan then nodded at Clifton Abra. Clifton opened his briefcase and distributed printed copies of Petra Hollis's investigation report to every person in the room. 37 pages. Every hotel receipt. Every phone log. Every wire transfer. Every witness statement, including Delphine Ross from the Beverly Hills restaurant. The story of the last year of their relationship, the real story, not the one Vivian had told, was now sitting in the hands of her mother, her uncle, and her cousin. Rosalind Cole read 4 pages of that report and began to shake, not from sadness, from the specific, suffocating feeling of a woman who had pushed her daughter toward a cliff while calling it an upgrade, and was now holding the documentation of exactly how far the fall had been. Merritt turned from the window. His voice, when he spoke, was stripped of every ounce of the authority he had carried into that room. Declan, he said, I owe you an apology. Declan looked at him. I said things publicly that I had no right to say. I measured you by the wrong thing. He stopped, swallowed. I'm sorry. Declan nodded once. That was all Merritt got, and it was more than he deserved. It was Waverly, Declan's sister, who finally told Vivian's family about the inheritance. Not to be cruel, Waverly was not built for cruelty. She said it because she was tired of watching her brother be treated like a consolation prize, and she believed that the truth, all of it, needed to be in the room. 3 days after the wedding, Waverly said, Declan met with grandfather's attorney. Eldridge Morrow left him everything. Commercial properties, agricultural investments, business shares, just under $5 million. The air left Vivian's lungs so completely it was visible. Rosalind turned to look at her daughter, and for a moment, just a moment, you could see in her face the precise shape of every bad piece of advice she had ever given. Vivian stared at Declan. He looked back at her quietly. The lawyer also told him, Waverly continued, that grandfather had planned to include his future wife in the family business. Had she married him on Saturday, her name would have been in those plans by Tuesday. Nobody in that room said anything for a very long time. Vivian left that meeting with nothing resolved and everything exposed. Garrison Vale, when he learned about the DNA test and the family gathering, did not offer comfort. He told her, in the flat voice he used for things that no longer interested him, that he had spoken with his lawyers and that she should do the same. She was alone. She was pregnant. She was living in a man's penthouse under his rules with no money of her own, no business she had fully maintained, and a family too humiliated to rally around her. Desperation has a sound. It sounds like rationalization. Over the next 2 weeks, Vivian sent Declan 12 messages. The first few were apologies. Genuine sounding, detailed, the kind of apologies that cost something to write. Declan did not respond. Then the messages shifted. I just need some help getting on my feet. It's not much. You can afford it now. No response. After everything I was to you, you can't help me right now? Really? No response. Then on a Sunday night, the message that changed everything. Declan, I have videos from when we were together, personal ones. Either you help me financially, or I will post them everywhere. I'm not playing. Declan read it, set the phone down, picked it up again, screenshot it. He already had 11 other messages saved. He called Petra Hollis. Petra Hollis did not waste time. She connected Declan with a criminal attorney named Renata Osei, 43 years old, natural hair, the reputation of someone who had never once in her career tolerated being outmaneuvered. Renata reviewed the messages in 30 minutes and told Declan he had a strong case under California's extortion statutes and its laws against threatened distribution of intimate imagery. Declan handed over every message, every screenshot, every voice note Vivian had left. There were 3 of them, escalating in tone, the last one enough to make even Petra raise an eyebrow. The report was filed. Investigators contacted Vivian within 4 days. She was arrested on a Friday morning. The Newport Beach community learned about it the same way they had learned about everything else in this story. Through their phones in the middle of their mornings, while they were drinking coffee and thinking about their own ordinary lives. The same people who had posted "she upgraded" were now very quiet. Garrison Vale issued no statement. He did not post bail. He did not send a lawyer. He did not call. He simply, and this is the most Garrison Vale thing that could have happened, moved on. 8 months later, Declan Morrow's name was on the deed of 3 properties in the greater Los Angeles area. He had brought in a property management firm, partnered with a development consultant his father knew, and was in the early stages of a project that would add 2 more assets to the portfolio by the following year. His engineering career had not stopped. It had expanded. He was working. He was building. He was, for the first time in years, building without someone standing beside him measuring the ceiling. There was a woman in his life now. Her name was Adiz Bright, 30 years old, an architect, originally from Houston, sharp-minded and unhurried in the way of someone who had done enough inner work to know exactly what she was looking for. She had met Declan through a mutual colleague 3 months after the wedding debacle, when he was still quiet and careful and not entirely ready. She had not pushed. She had simply been present, consistently, quietly, which, as it turned out, was exactly Declan's language. Across town, in a smaller apartment than she had ever imagined she would inhabit, Vivian Cole was navigating a legal process that had stripped away the last of her public standing. The charges had been reduced through negotiation, but the record remained. Garrison Vale had moved on publicly. There were photos of him at a gala in New York with a different woman in a different dress laughing the same laugh. Her mother called more often now. The conversations were different, shorter. Rosalind spoke with the careful tone of a woman trying to rebuild something she had helped dismantle, and Vivian listened with the particular patience of someone who no longer had the energy for pretense. She was raising her daughter alone. She was not broken, but she was not who she had planned to be. And on certain evenings, when the apartment was quiet and the baby was sleeping and the world outside had nothing for her, she would pick up her phone and see Declan's name somewhere, a business mention, a tag photo. Adiz's face beside his at an event she recognized from the circles she used to run in. She would put the phone face down, and she would sit with a specific, quiet devastation of a choice she could not take back. There is no dramatic final confrontation in this story. Declan never stood over Vivian and delivered a speech. He never sent a message to rub anything in. He never posted. He never performed. Because that is not what victory looks like when it is real. Real victory is quiet. It looks like a man who decided his character was worth more than his anger, built something extraordinary from the ruins of his worst Saturday, and let the results speak for themselves. The most powerful thing Declan Morrow ever did was nothing. He said nothing when he read that message at the altar. He revealed nothing when Petra delivered that report. He paid nothing when the threats came. He performed nothing when the inheritance landed. He just kept going, and the world caught up with the truth entirely on its own. If this story hit you, and I mean really hit you, share it with someone who needs to hear it right now. Someone going through something. Someone who just got betrayed. Someone who is tempted to chase the appearance of something instead of the substance. Like this video. Subscribe if you haven't. And drop in the comments the one moment in this story that got you the most. Was it the church? The inheritance? The DNA test? The arrest? Tell me, because I read every single one.